Welcome to another game review, this time Unbroken, a game of survival and revenge from Ultima Games. It was designed by Artem Safarov. I apologize if I messed that up. And this is a solo-only game I picked up on Kickstarter for about 29 bucks. And it came a few days ago, and I'd had a chance to play it quite a few times. It is basically a resource management game disguised as a dungeon crawl, where you are the lone survivor of a crew that went down into a dungeon trying to get treasure and fame, and everybody was dead but you, and you wake up with absolutely nothing, and you have to fight your way out of the dungeon over the course of 4 rounds. But the trick is, you've got to build weapons, find food, learn cunning, and save your stamina so you can get out alive. So, with that, let's take a look at the components. So the components, well, my box is not closing all the way, but that is because of how I decided to store the cards in here, and that made it too thick. But if you don't stack them all up like I did, it will close all the way. It's actually a fairly nice box. It does have quite a complete rule book. It goes through step by step, just like you'd be playing a game. And has some pretty good examples to describe how all the actions work. Came with a little poster. I'll just put that to the side. The Kickstarter version also came with a dice bag, which I may or may not use. Tokens are wooden. The blue are for good guy tracking, the red are for bad guy tracking, and then this little fox is if you need to, you can, on the quick start guide that you can sit by the board, you can just move this along to know where you are. I have not found that to be a requirement. It's a fairly straightforward game. So, lots of cards. I stored them in this deck box just because there are so many, but there are 3 types. There are conditions, which are the cards that tell you, things that are either wrong or right with you. And it does come with some blanks, so you can make some of your own. The skill cards, every time you defeat one of the 4 main monsters, you pick 2 skill cards, and you get to keep that skill. And they just, they have a quick description of what the skill is, and what kind of resource management you can do, or attack you can make, or whatever. Then you have the encounter cards, and these are what basically sort of drive you through the story and help you prepare for your boss battle. So for this one, it's called Wrecking is Hungry Work. You can spend a food to get some stamina and some logs, and it takes 2 time to do that. And we'll go through this later, how these work. Comes with 1 dice. It's a 6-sided die with just special markers for 1 through 6. This size card, on Board Game Geek they have, for those that like to sleeve. I do like to sleeve. I'm not going to sleeve these though. They have all the sizes you need. But these are your weapons choices, and you have some blank ones, so you can also make your own. And as you go, you start out with bare hands, and based on what kind of resources you gain, you can either go up the club route or the knife route. And then the knife, you can either make a sword or a spear, and that's where you end. So spear is as far as you can go. Axe would be as far as you can go. Sword and a maul. The maul and the axe are from up the club route. So that's that size card. Those are your weapons, and you'll build them as you go along. And then you have a simple guide. This is a nice thing just to set off to the side. I actually just leave it on the actions guide here, and it just tells you these are your general actions that you can do anytime. Then you have your characters. It comes with 4 characters. They're 2-sided, so you can have the huntress or the hunter, and we'll go over these actual cards later. So that is your characters. There are 4 of them that come with it. This is just a score pad to say how well you did, so you can keep track over time. And then the the really large cards. This is an achievement one again, just so you can keep track of things over time. Then you have your 2 quick reference cards, and these really are kind of helpful, but you just set them down by the game board and it walks you through travel phase, how you do everything, rest, encounter, preparation, go to the steps over here, and this is a combat phase, so once you go into combat with one of the 4 monsters, 1 per level, this takes you through what you do. So pretty helpful, but again, very simple once you get into it. And then you have 24 monsters and 4 blank cards, and the monsters are by level, so at the end of each level you randomly pick a monster. So you know, one of these 6 level 1 monsters, you know, and it gives you, you know, how much health they have, if they have armor. None of these have armor, but you have to break the armor first. And then, you know, a name, and then you roll a dice each turn for their attack and what happens, and then when you kill them, this is what you get at the end. So again, fairly simple and straightforward. And then the last component are basically your trackers and how you play the game, or what you track. So a time tracker here, your monster's armor, your monster's health, and then your resources, each of your resources here, your effort, stamina, that's a medium stamina and a really big stamina. And I really do like, I don't know if you can see them, but they are double layered, so you just slide the little cubes along them. They did a very nice job with that. I will give them kudos. So your time tracker, it just goes through here like that. Your effort or stamina, so you would have 3. If you use 1, you just slide it down to 2. So those are actually very nice, and that is the central core of your gameplay. So that is really the components. Quick, down and dirty. They're good. They're not great. Like I said, I really like that they did this dual layer. Cards have this kind of silk, or the sheen to them. They're sticky enough to use, but not so sticky that they stick to each other. Yeah, I think they did a pretty nice job on the components. Setup is really simple. First thing you do is you lay out your 2 trackers. One is for the hero, and this is all of your resources. They're set at 0. Your effort tracker on normal level, you put that at 13 to start with, and 0 for your medium and your high. And then over on your time and monster tracker, there are little blocks that, based on which turn it is first, second, third, and fourth. And so you set your tracker each turn to the appropriate block, and that's your number of turns or time, you know, your time resource that you have. And then your monster tracker, you have your armor, which starts at 0, and your health, which starts at 0, and you only set those when you pick your monster for the big battle. Next is your player. So I'm going to do the brawler. Then you start with weapons, your bare hands, you put it here. Then you just stack your cards, whatever works for you. So the skill cards, condition cards, and counter cards. I put the extra weapons here that you upgrade to, and then the monsters here. And to this side, you don't have to have them, but you can put your quick start travel phase tracker and your quick start reference for your combat phase. I'm not tracker, but phase. And you can use this little fox thing to go through it if you wish, and it just does yes, no's, and where you go. So for your first game, you might want to use it. That is the entirety of the setup. Just don't forget your dice, and you have the extra trackers because some of your conditions will require you to use the little blocks on them. And that is really the entire setup. Alright, so playing the game is actually fairly easy conceptually. One thing I didn't do in the setup is put down this actions guide, which I like to have because it tells you what you can do, your general actions, and then what you get out of it. And those are ones that you can do during any time. Then, as you start your turn, you put down a number of blue cubes equal to the number the round it is on your character, and that's the number of times they can do their special action. So this is first round, you get 1 cube. You can do his special action or her special action just once. So then the first step of the game in the travel phase, there are 2 major phases, the travel phase and a combat phase. The combat phase you only do at the end of the round to finish it. So during the travel phase, you're going around trying to collect resources, manage your time, which is set based on the round. So this, you get 7 time increments in the first round. So first thing you do is what they call the preparation step, and you can basically take as many general actions, so using the special actions here, any of the actions on the action guide, so you can, you know, spend your effort to get a bigger effort. You can spend inspiration, which is your medium effort, to make a big effort, a grand effort. You can scout, which means you can go and see what the monster is early, or you can orienteer, which is a travel action, which means you can look at some extra encounter cards, things like that, or you can upgrade your weapons. So once you've done that, so let's say I'm not going to do any of that this round, you go to what the decision step, which basically means, am I going to go explore or am I going to go fight the monster? Well, I haven't done anything else, so I would explore. So to explore, you pull 2 encounter cards. So in this case, I can spend 1 time and 1 effort to gain a food, or I can spend 2 time, no efforts, or no other resources to get 3 efforts. And then there's a little flavor text to tell kind of a story as you go along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this one. I'm going to spend 2 time, 1, 2, and I'm going to get 3 extra effort, 1, 2, 3. And then you put those aside, and then you can either go on and do that sequence again, or you can say, yeah, I'm ready to fight the monster. Well, I haven't done much, so I would do the sequence again. So preparation, what do I want to do? I think what I'll do, I can spend 4 of my little efforts, so you go down 1, 2, 3, 4 to get 1 medium effort, and you need those to upgrade and that sort of thing. And that doesn't cost you any time or anything. Next, I'm going to go ahead and do, I don't want to fight, so I'll do an encounter again. So I can spend no time, spend 1 effort, and I can reveal 3 of these cards next turn instead of 2, or I can spend 4 time and 1 effort and get 2 food. The other option you have, if you don't like either of the cards, you can spend that amount of time to get that amount of effort. So just for grins, let's say I'm going to do that. So I put these away, I get 4 effort, 1, 2, 3, 4, but I spend 4 time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so now I can either go to combat or I can try and do this all again. Well, I'm looking, and if I spend any more time I go down to 0, which means you get ambushed. So I would elect to go to combat. If I didn't, and I ended up using my last effort, I would roll the dice, we'll do that in a second, but it's a thing called ambush, and every monster has a different kind of ambush. So in the case of the Gibberling, you get the paranoid condition for the next level. But some of them are much worse than that. So with the giant spider, they take 2 turns at the beginning of the battle step. So you don't want to get ambushed if you can help it. Alright, so that's really all the travel phase. So, and then you get into the combat phase either by choosing to do it, or you run out of time and you get ambushed. So, moving on to the combat phase. Okay, combat starts pretty simply. The first thing you do is you roll your dice, and then you pick, based on the number on the die, you pick the monster. So you look at all your level 1 monsters, and at the bottom of it there is a hash mark that matches. So this is a 5, so it would be this monster here, the Shrieking Fungus. So you'd lay that monster out, and didn't get ambushed, so that doesn't work. There's no trickery, so as you get your monster you can do a trickery, which means you can give up some resources and just bypass them, but you don't get any of the stuff down here. And then these are the combat actions that they can do. But it starts out, you get to go first on normal level. So with the bare hands, you can spend one super massive effort to kill an armor, but he has no armor. He only has 3 hit points, which, thank you. So you put this at 3. If there were armor, you do armor. You have to fight armor first. So what I can do is, because I went through in such a fast fashion, I would not have done that in the game, but I can spend 2 effort and take away 1 hit point. So 2 effort, 1, 2, and he moves his hit points down 1. That's the end of my turn. His turn, you roll the dice, so it's a 1. In this case, you get 1 wound, you lose 1 effort. And then that's his turn. Then, for my turn, I will do the same thing again. I'll spend 2 more effort, drop him 1, then he gets to roll a 1 again, so I'd lose another effort. If I'd rolled a 2, you'd lose 2, 3, you would lose 2 efforts. A 4, the Shrieking Fungus heals a wound. A 5 is Spore, you gain the Panic condition for the next level, and Spore, for 6, you would gain the Paranoid for the next level. But in this case, I'm going to spend 2 more effort, I'm down to 8, and I kill the monster. Now, because I killed him, I get a reward of a food, so my food goes up 1. I get a Cunning. I get 3 effort, 1, 2, 3. And I gain a skill. Now, what I forgot to do is, when you start the combat round, you're supposed to move it to the next level. I forgot to do that, because some of the effects of monsters can move that up or down, or sometimes you actually get additional time as a reward. So you do that before you start fighting the monster. So that's the end of that. I got to get the skill now. So for skills, you pull 2 cards. So in this case, Vermin Master. As a combat action, you can spend a food and an effort to deal 3 wounds, and these wounds will bypass armor. Or you can be a survivor. You ignore all threatened and confused attacks in combat, and after you rest during the exploration step, you can spend a log to gain a medium effort. I think I will take the Vermin Master, so now in combat, it's an additional attack to spend those to get some extra wounds. And then that is the end of this phase. So what you do is you move on to the hunger phase, which you have to spend the number of food to eat after you've been in your big battle equal to the round. So this was the first round, so I would eat 1 food. I'd be back down to 0 for the food, but I don't take any damage. If you don't have food at the end of it, then you take damage based on how many food blocks you don't eat. So that is really it. Now you just set up for the next round, which is basically as simple as, because it's second round, you now get 2 blocks here, and you can spend all of them. You get to reset them. I just didn't spend one. You go through that whole sequence again. You can upgrade, so I don't have any metals, so I can't upgrade yet. But you can upgrade your weapons. You go through that sequence until you get to the last round, and you fight the 4th monster. And if you kill him, you win. If he kills you, if you run out of effort, you lose. And if any time during the game you run out of effort, you lose. So that is the entire game in a nutshell. There is a way you add up points at the end, so you can compare how well you did in games versus prior games. But other than that, pretty simple resource management. Just try and gain these, you spend them as you go along, and that's really the whole thing. Alright, so what did I think of the game? Well, first, artwork. Artwork is pretty good. It's kind of fun, Dungeons and Dragon-y without being over the top, but has a cartoon feel to it, which is okay. So the artwork gives, a pretty good thumbs up. Rulebook, very readable. You can read through it once, and you can play the game. You also have the quick reference guides, which, actually you could probably play the game even without going through the rulebook and just referencing back during your first play. Theme. This is a resource management game themed as a dungeon crawler. So it does put you in the mindset of you're in a dungeon and you're fighting the monsters, but does it make me feel immersed in the dungeon? No, not really. The flavor text is okay. It kind of walks you through a story, but it's really pretty obvious and you don't really need it. In fact, after the first round I didn't read it, I just kind of whipped through. Now as far as the mechanics are very simple. They're easy to learn. It's very balanced. I think I win, in my first 10 times or so, I won about 70% of the time. So on normal hardness, normal difficulty. So as far as, you roll the dice, there's a little bit of luck in there. So you could roll the wrong, thing and take too much damage and die. But in general, it's manage your resources so you have enough of your power to beat the monster all 4 times. But it's pretty clean, it's quick, and there are no major flaws in the actual design and how the mechanics run. Replayability. This is where it starts to get a little bit tougher for me. There is a whole lot of variability in the game, but not a lot of variability in how you play it. So what I found is I'm just, I power through my encounters to get enough stuff to make my weapons, so I have enough food and enough power to fight the monsters. And while there are different monsters and there are different players, it's very similar how I play it every time. So while you're going to get a different experience from what monsters you face, what encounters you come up with, you don't really get a variance in how you're going to play it. So I felt like it was kind of rote, and I did the same thing over and over. I'm being a little wishy-washy on this one because that's kind of how I feel about it. I think there's a lot of variability in which monsters you can get, and you've got 4 different kinds of characters that you can play, but you're going to do the same thing with them. How you get there, so what your strengths are different, but the way you actually play to those strengths is not that different. So the way I manage the resources varies a little bit about which one I'm going to focus on at which time. But it's really pretty much, I pull 2 encounters, I look at it, I figure out which is the better option to prep me for my fight, and I make sure that I don't get ambushed, and I fight the monsters, and I roll the dice, and I'm probably going to win most of the time if I manage my resources halfway decently. But there's not a lot of variance from that pattern, if that makes sense to you. One thing I did want to mention that made this game more fun for me was that there is a little bit of a push your luck element in it. And that is, as your time is starting to wind down, do you pull more encounters or not? Because you want to avoid the ambush, but sometimes you need more food, you're going to have to eat afterwards, or you want that last element to make sure you get through the boss battle. So that did add, I wouldn't say replayability, but it did add a little bit of excitement to what I felt was otherwise a fairly regimented and uninspiring process that I went over and over with. So the push your luck element is a big selling point that was kind of fun. Alright, so really overall, I think if you're looking for a solo dungeon crawl, you're going to be very disappointed. If you're looking for a solo resource management game, I think this is quite adequate. I happen to have another couple of games that came right about the same time, set a watch. I've been playing Deep Space 6, which is a solo game. So, in comparison to those, this is sort of, it's run-of-the-mill. It's a good game. It's probably worth the money, but I'm not 100% sure that if you're a dungeon crawl looking person, you're probably going to want to go to something different than this. If you really like a resource management game that you can do quick in 30 minutes, then this might be a good option for you. Now, when I do an overall rating, rating it as on the table, meaning I want it all the time. On the shelf means I'm going to pull it out pretty often. In the closet means I'll just play it every once in a while. I just kind of keep it in the closet versus trade it versus trash it. I think this is clearly an in-the-closet kind of game. I mean, I may pull it out if I'm going on a business trip or something, or on vacation, and I think I may want, this kind of game. It's a little different from my dungeon crawl type game, so it is a little bit, for me, it's different than the others, but I'm going to have a long time in between plays So even though you've got 4 characters, really once you play them each through a couple times, I find that it's really starting to repeat itself. So for me, it's an in the closet, put it away, forget about it, bring it back when I want that resource management kind of fix in a dedicated solo game. Alright, that does it for this review of Unbroken, a game of survival and revenge. I think it is a good little game that I will pull out every once in a while and play when I want a resource management fix disguised as a dungeon crawl. It has very clean mechanics. It does what it says it can do, but I think that after a couple dozen plays, it's really going to lose its freshness, and I think I'll have to put it away until I'm ready for that resource management fix again. But overall, it's not a bad game. It's just not a great game, and I think it's probably worth picking up if you get it for a good price. I am hoping that they put out some more characters and maybe some more monsters to see if I can give it a little bit more replayability, but like I said, there's a lot of variability in the internal components. There's just not a lot of variability in how it plays. So with that, hey, pick it up, try it out. They do have a print and play. See if you like it. You might like it a lot more than me, and that's all good. But until next time, happy gaming.